Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Spoon. This is a first and new series on OSRS. Specifically, this is going to be a chunk locked account. I've been playing chunk locked accounts for quite a while now. Haven't ever created content regarding it. I thought, why not take a new journey? And no better time to start than when Varlamore, the new city, is released. So here we are with that journey. In the background here, you're just seeing my first moments in the chunk, exploring, seeing what's around, and getting a lay of the land, essentially, before we get started. Now that we have introductions out of the way, we'll get into the rules, essentially, that I've laid out for my chunk locked progress series. Primarily, we're going to go with the extreme limpwort rules. There's going to be some slight modifications, just because I'm a pleb. I'm sure many other people are also plebs, don't necessarily have a million hours to put into these things, nor have the skill or brain power that some of the other content creators have. So I'm more of just a regular Joe Schmo. At the end of the day, I do my best. I'll play this game, have fun with it, and I think that's really all that matters. But part of the Limpwort adjustments that I'm going to put to his rule set, first, thanks Limpwort for all the hard work he puts into his content and all the inspiration and other series that have kind of spidered out from what he's created, but definitely not excluding every other content creator, Verf, etc. Anybody that's created chunk locked progression type series and content, we appreciate it. It's definitely bred quite a community, and we thank everybody that has, for sure. The first one is skilling capes. I don't have a million years to put into construction capes or any other capes for that matter. So skilling capes are not going to be completely ignored. It's not going to pause progression as a whole. If we get to the point where a skilling cape is unlocked in a chunk that we have, I'm going to arbitrarily put 5 levels per chunk roll that we need to make meaningful progress, essentially. So when we roll a new chunk, we've got to get 5 more levels in whatever that skill is until we're able to roll the next chunk. It's going to push out sometimes the progression and the actual achieving of a skill cape, but I think when it gets to the end, you still get that grind aspect of the last couple of levels. So I think that still is not going to be ignored completely. If we get to the point where we're rolling free chunks, essentially, which is chunks that don't have a task associated with them, we won't stop, get the 5 levels, then roll again. What we'll do is we'll roll again immediately, but we'll keep those 5 levels as a backlog, and now we need to get 10 until the next one we roll. So we're not ignoring any levels. We're just hold on to them essentially in our back pocket, and that way we can continue to roll chunks and have other progress to do aside from just that one skill. Second change is pets. Pets aren't going to pause progression either. Again, meaningful progress is going to be needed to be made. Those are going to be on a case by case basis. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet for some things, but if we've got a skill based one like thieving, maybe we put 5,000 pickpockets next to it per chunk or something to that effect, that we can make some progress and continue to try to get that skilling pet. Third, secondary drops are not going to be considered. So what I mean by that, a secondary training method is typically drops related. It's a 1 in 20 drop, and you use that 1 in 20 drop to go smelt with copper or tin or something to that effect. I'm going to cut it off at 1 in 50. If something is more than 1 in 50, I'm not going to go for it. If it's 1 in 100, I'm not going to consider it a method to try to train. We'll see how this progresses later on. If I feel like this is still too hard for my kind of pleb mindset, then maybe we'll adjust it. We'll see. Farming, it's going to be completely ignored for tasks purposes itself. We're not going to, if we get a redwood seed, we're not going to get stuck behind getting a redwood planted for a million years. That said, Ironmen need farming, so we're not going to be able to neglect farming either. We're going to use it and progress it as fast as we possibly can, and go from there. Things that are not within my chunk at all times are not going to be used as tasks. This comes from another YouTuber that actually is doing another Varlamore chunk lock series that I saw, Crack with a K. I'll link his channel in the description. Excited to see his content and follow along with what he's got and see how our journeys differ since we start in different chunks. But it's inspired solely from what he is. I love it to death. Pure, for example, if it spawns in a wheat field, I'm not going to include it. If we get to Zenaris, I'll include it. Same with like shooting stars, we'll just ignore essentially completely. Doesn't mean I can't use it. Doesn't mean I can't use it to my advantage. It just means that we're not gated behind it. And the last one that I really see here is prayer. So prayer, I'm not going to gate any tasks behind prayer except for scrolls, things like rigor. If we get to the point where we got a rigor scroll, then we'll need to get the prayer level to use it. Those types of things. Other than that, we're going to use the Limport rule set with some of these modifications. We'll see if we need to change them in the future. All right, next up, we've got part 2 of our rules overview. All collection logs are required. We've got to do all collection logs as much as possible. If something, again, is completely out of the question and takes a long time, we'll throw it in a backlog, but we need to make meaningful progression consistently, and I'll lay that out in some kind of a graphic every episode of what our current chunk tasks are, and I'll make sure I include any of those meaningful progression type things that we've pushed in the backlog a little bit. We have to obtain all forms of best in slot. That even includes substyles like stab, slash, those types of things. We need to get every single one. I feel like they could be used in very niche situations, so we will want to do that. Magic spells are required, and you must do the highest level only when a primary method of gathering runes are unlocked. Again, shops are included in that, but also the 1 in 50 drops are also included that, or anything better odds than that. Again, this might bite me a little bit later on. We'll see if we need to adjust that or not, but I'm confident we can do some couple 100-hour grinds and be okay. Last one here on this section is quest diaries, achievement diaries, combat achievements. All of those need to be completed. I feel like this is a pretty standard chunk locked rule, so we'll just keep it, maintain it, and track it as best we can. Now we'll get into the last portion of the rules overview. This is part 3. This includes any chunk exceptions. When do I need to leave the chunk? Why do I need to leave the chunk? And what are we going to do about it? I should have done these before. I didn't. So now this is kind of the situation we're in. But the first one is to unlock Herblore. We'll go back and do Druidic Ritual, though we'll only do it once I can actually kill a bear. Second one is buying a house. I must obtain the coins within my chunk before I'm able to go do this. Those 1,000 coins or the cost of getting the house must be obtained within my current rules and my current chunk before I can leave. The last portion of this is all of these chunk exceptions and any more that might pop up throughout this process, right, must be completed at the same time. I don't feel a desire or a burning need to currently do this, so I haven't taken the time to run out and go do this yet. We'll let it mull over a little bit, see if there's any other ones that I come up with before we end up leaving the chunk to go complete these. That way we don't have to leave the chunk more than once, if at all possible. All right, now that we've got kind of the basics out of the way and the rules out of the way and any exceptions out of the way, let's get into the chunk. What chunk am I going to pick? Why did I pick it? And what are we going to do moving forward for rolling chunks, those types of things? I really only wanted one exception. I mean, I guess 2 exceptions. One, I wanted a bank. I don't feel like playing Ultimate Ironman, so I want a bank. I want to be able to bank everything as I go. Second one is I didn't want to be right next to the Coliseum, if at all possible. I didn't want to immediately get gated by very late game content or content in general that has quite depth to it. That being said, as you can see here, this is the chunk I've decided. I've decided to go with this chunk. It's the bank that's furthest away from the Coliseum, essentially, without getting into necessarily like the Hunter Guild, for example, which I haven't been there yet, so I assume you need a Hunter's level to get in there, but correct me if I'm wrong. So either way, this is the chunk we'll get into. There's some clips here and there that you've been watching. This is, again, me exploring the chunk that I have already. So this is the chunk. This is where we're going to start. When it comes to rolling chunks, if I can get into the chunk at all, even for 1 square, it's rollable in my mind. I can get there, so I roll it. even if it has no meaningful progression in it, if I can't access most of the portions in it, that's fine. If I can get into that chunk, I'm going to roll it. That said, if we roll some of these chunks and they're over the water, I'm not going to do that because obviously I can't get into that chunk. Second portion of this is how do we deal with boats or transportation in general. I haven't decided completely yet. I want to stay in Varlamore as long as I feel that it takes to understand the content that was added. This is fresh content. It doesn't happen very often in OSRS. We need to absorb that. I'm not going to set a certain number of chunks or a certain progression in the Coliseum or anything to that effect yet. What I'll do is when I just kind of get that feeling, I'll say, okay, in the next 2 or 3 chunks, we'll unlock the rest. I won't do it out of the whim, but I'll make sure that there's at least some kind of foresight or some kind of milestone that we want to hit before we end up opening that. Maybe it's the first skilling cape or something to that effect, but I want to make sure we stay here for a while, understand what this content is, explore it to its end, at least within reason, before we end up moving on to the rest of Gillinor. All right, well, I think that's most of the rules, the chunk, everything behind that. Now I want to set expectations. I have a full-time job, as many of you do that enjoy this game. I can't dedicate 16 hours a day into creating content, into progression in this series. I'm going to do it as much as I possibly can. I will try to update as much as I possibly can. I'm not going to promise any certain timetables. I'm not going to promise monthly, weekly, whatever updates. I'm hoping at least once a week an update video to at least give any of you that find this even remotely entertaining inclining of kind of where we are, what progress has been made, things like that. We'll see how it goes. If I need to make changes to schedules, make more priority to this series, or perhaps the other way around, take some priority away from this if life has situations. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. I'll deal with it as it comes. We can assess it as a group, as a channel, as a content creator and viewer kind of relationship, and we'll move on from there. But first off, thanks. Welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoyed the content, at least for this first overview, kind of rules breakdown and expectations. And I'm hoping tomorrow or later today we'll put out the first episode, so you could see the progress that we've made, and kind of see what we're going to look at from this chunk and the rest of the adventure we have ahead of us. Thanks, guys.